the first one we're going to talk about is actually called an esteem sensitivity. Now, this is one that most people talk about, scales of narcissism. It's kind of like an axis, really. It works with the other two on either side of it there as well. So narcissism is basically personified, or it's demonstrated as an esteem sensitivity. Okay, so it's a lot to do with ego and things like that there as well. Okay, so there is if there is a scale of narcissism, it could be basically what they call somatic, which is of the body, and then you've got cerebral, which is of the mind as well. So that's probably as far as it goes into a scale. But a lot of the actions that people describe, and they say they're narcissistic, they're not actually narcissistic. Sometimes it's borderline personality disorder that it comes from, and sometimes it's schizoid personality disorder. But they're the inflexible extreme forms. But it doesn't mean that whether or not they've got it is a moot point. If they're doing the actions, this is where the sensitivities will come from there as well, okay? So there's only about 1% of the population would be diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. But you see it a lot more in popular culture. So it's more not likely not psychopathic. It's, you hear people talk about sociopaths who can change their actions, and their experience is what guides them and creates them in that way. If it gets to the stage where they can no longer change the way they think, then it becomes an inflexible form, and then it would be considered narcissistic personality disorder. But narcissism is reversible, but not for a narcissist, okay? So this is where it comes into that some people can't change the way they think, so you're just going to have to deal with them. And in work life, that's where it comes down to, they say in acting, never work with kids and animals. In real life, you've got to do that in a lot of cases, but they're not actually kids, but their mindset could be still stuck in that phase. Okay, so esteem sensitive folk, they feel compelled to be disgustingly positive, an emphasis on their own accomplishments and perceived perfection. They can't do anything wrong. No one can do it as good as me. This sort of stuff. Okay, criticism is difficult to accept because it might and it might threaten the relationship. Okay, it's this is where it comes into, they might be pushing a poor product to market, and this is where sometimes, particularly with social enterprises and things like that, they just want to do good. They know that it's a good product, but they can't actually sell it to people, and people don't see the point of it. And they tend to push them, and they become too salesy. And it's like, look, if you just buy it and try it, you'll be fine. You'll see what I see. Okay, so that's some of the things that comes out. Okay, they might focus on how they're positively perceived in a relationship at the cost of giving attention to the relationship. Okay, so it may be that they're not actually looking to build the relationship. If they're seen as the hero in the relationship, that's all they're worried about, okay? So there could be, they mightn't be making the calls. If they don't need anything from you, they mightn't be calling you. But as soon as they need something for you, they're going to be in your back pocket again, okay? So that's something you just got to be mindful of. Okay, well, what do they want when they call you? Okay, so next one, overall attachment theme is they're afraid of rejection. Okay, avoids vulnerability and need, because that actually leads to rejection in their case. They want to be seen as perfect. Okay, so their primary defense is they seek the goal of their primary defense is an enhanced sense of self-perfection and admiration. That's what they're seeking. Okay, what do they avoid? They avoid criticism and feelings of inadequacy and imperfections, because then that affects their self-worth. Okay, unwanted effect. This is where fragmentation, humiliation, shame, and emptiness. Okay, that's what comes from if you don't look after what their needs are. What are they vigilant to? Devaluation, criticism, attack, and judgment. Okay, so that's what's going to trigger them. Okay, so this is what they don't want from a relationship. They don't want the humiliation, the shame. That causes the emptiness, and that's where it goes down that path there as well. Okay, so primary defense strategy, they're grandiose. They feel entitled. Okay, performance and perfection, seeking and demanding agreement. Okay, so they're going to be, just trying to justify what they do and basically batter you into agreeing with them there in a lot of cases. Okay, they've got how do they find, that they look at their defensive decision. Okay, this is what they're basing their actions on. Okay, to need another is a sign of weakness. This is what's going on in their head. If there's a disagreement, I'm wrong, or the other is wrong. There's no in between. Okay, so they need to feel safe, and difference is not safe to them. Okay, so if you've got a difference of opinion, that's not putting them in a safe place, and that's where it goes and triggers another sensitivity, a psychological safety sensitivity. So these people, they get a double whammy then, where it's starting to get really negative, the relationship there as well. Okay. Others' representations of them, in a positive effect, they seem perfect, special, omnipotent, adoring, and adored. So they've got a lot of love to give, but they want it back in return there as well. Okay, so that's the positives of this. This is where you can see people that people love them and all this sort of stuff. That's what they're after. That's the positive. Okay, but when we look on the other side of the coin, the negative. Okay, they can be disappointing, imperfect, cold, and rejection to other people there as well. Okay, so they come up with all these grandiose claims, but then they might be able to live up to it, and then that's where there's damage to the relationship. But they're always going to be able to find an excuse for coming up with their failure. Okay, you might find that what they do is when they start off, they go, well, I'm not an expert, but this is what I think you should do. Then when it doesn't work, they turn it around and go, well, I told you I wasn't an expert, so but this is why it didn't work. And then they start to pick apart things that you didn't do, that they say, well, that it didn't work because you didn't do this. Okay, so what I'm saying is, what I'm saying would work if you did this. So then you go off and you try again, and then the cycle repeats again there as well. Okay, so self-representation, a positive. This is what they think. They think they're wonderful, special, perfect, fully understood by others. Okay, so this is where the communication breaks down. They tell you what to do, you don't understand it, and then you go off and do it, and because you don't fully understand it, they can't understand why you don't do it. But I told you what to do. Okay, so the self-representation negative. Okay, this is where they go into they feel fragmented, they feel humiliated, they feel flawed, they feel empty, and they feel left alone. This is when their mindset is in a negative frame of mind as well. Okay, so this is where they're generally naturally positive frame of mind. So what they'll do to get out of this negative frame of mind is they'll just dismiss the naysayers, and they'll basically just ghost them, and they won't actually talk to them, because they're not going to acknowledge them, because all you're doing is you're just trying to create limiting beliefs in them. Okay, so moving on to the next part. This is what they're really after. This is where it comes into the motivation. Okay, so their primary dilemma to get close is to be rejected. Okay, but to truly separate is also to be rejected. Okay, but if they're the one that makes the choice that they want to separate, then they're controlling the terms there. Okay, so unspoken demands that are placed on others. There is an intense pressure from the esteem-sensitive to be acknowledged for their specialness, performance, and perceived entitlement. Okay, now this is where it comes into that they perceive themselves, they're entitled to this accolade. Okay, but if they ask for it, then that's going to give away the narcissistic quality. So they know that they don't want to ask for it. So that's why it's an unspoken demand in a lot of cases there as well. Okay, so if extroverts, likely to be the somatic, like I said, of the body, physical validation and that sort of stuff there too. And that's in regards to products, the physical evidence of using products as well. Introverts likely to be cerebral of the mind, so they're looking at being rewarded. Their accolades can be for their intelligence. Oh, you're so smart. This is what they're after. But they're not going to come out and they're not going to ask you this, are they smart? They're just going to try and over-justify things and go through it and link a whole lot of stuff like that. And they understand it, so but why can't you? God, you must be stupid. That sort of thinking is what tends to be going on inside their head. And the introverts with esteem sensitivity are having these conversations constantly inside their head. So when you're talking to them, you're saying something, but they may not actually be listening. They may be, don't listen to this person in their head there as well, okay? Whereas the extroverts will basically come out and say, oh, what do you mean? And, do you mean this? And they might actually ask you for clarification, okay? So that's the first one that we've gone through there. The esteem sensitivity. It's not just about people being narcissistic. Confident people can go like this as well, and everything in moderation. You're looking for the middle ground. If they've got no self-esteem, then that's going to be an issue. If they've got too much self-esteem, people that are overly positive have less ability to differentiate between a weak and strong argument. And that's where it comes into a problem with these people. Sometimes the best form of defense for them is attack. And that's why they just keep going. And you think, well, why would they do that? You know, because they've got the confidence and they go through it, and you think, wow, you look back and you think, God, why would they say that? That just sounds so stupid. Okay, but it doesn't sound stupid to them because they can justify it in their mind. It's just that you don't understand it. So there's a thing in training that says it's not that you don't understand. I just can't explain it to you in a way that you can understand. Narcissists or people with esteem sensitivity, they're not going to try and look for a way for you to understand it. You just have to understand it. Otherwise, you're just not a customer of theirs. And that's the sort of attitude. You know, you're not ready for me. You're not. You're not. You hear marketing people say that. Oh, you're not ready to take on my services because you're not doing this and this and this. Okay, they're not willing to explain it to you. They're just going to bump you back and say, look, you're not going to be a client of mine because you're not doing this sort of thing. Okay, so that's the first one, esteem sensitivity. So now we'll look at moving on to one of the other ones.